Mrs Alving, now I must speak seriously to you, and it is no longer the business advisor, your own and your husband's early friend who stands before you. It is the priests. The priests who stood before you at the moment in your life when you had gone furthest astray.
And what has the priest to say to me?
Tomorrow will be the 10th anniversary of your husband's death. Tomorrow I will do the memorial in his honor. Tomorrow I shall have to speak to the whole assembled multitude, but today I will speak to you alone.
Very well, speak.
Do you remember that after less than a year of married life, you stood on the verge of an abyss? That you fled from your husband and refused to return to him, however much he begged and prayed you?
Have you forgotten how miserable I was?
What right have we human beings to happiness? We simply have to do our duty, Mrs. Alving, and your duty was to hold firmly to the man you had once chosen and to whom you were bound by the holiest of ties.
You know very well what sort of life Alving was leading.
I know very well what rumours there were about him, and I'm the very last to approve of the life he led in his young days. But a wife is not appointed to be her husband's judge. It was your duty to bear with humility the cross which a higher power had laid upon you. But instead of that, you throw away the cross. You go and risk your good name and reputation and nearly succeed in ruining other people's reputation into the bargain.
Other people's? One other person's, you mean?
It was reckless of you to come seek refuge with me.
Oh, with our clergyman? With our intimate friend?
You may thank God that I had the necessary firmness and that I led you back to the path of duty and home to your lawful husband.
Yes, Pastor Manders, that was certainly your work.
I was but a poor instrument in a higher hand, and what a blessing it proved to you all the days of your life, that I induced you to resume the yoke of duty and obedience. Did not Alving turn his back on his errors? Did he not live with you from that time lovingly and blamelessly all his days? Did he not become a benefactor to the whole district? Now I come to the next great error in your life.
What do you mean?
Just as you once disowned a wife's duty, so have you since disowned a mother's.
Ah.
You have been all your life under a pestilent spirit of insubordination. You have never known how to endure any bond. Everything that has weighed upon you in your life, you have cast away without care or conscience. It did not please you to be a wife any longer, and you left your husband. You found it troublesome to be a mother, and you sent your child forth among strangers.
Yes, that is true. I did so.
And thus you have become a stranger to him.
No, I am not.
Yes, you are. You had sinned greatly against your husband, that you recognized by raising an orphanage to him. Recognize now also how you have sinned against your son. There may yet be time to lead him back from the paths of error. Turn back yourself and save what may yet be saved in him. For you, Mrs. Alving, are a guilt-laden mother.
You have now spoken out, Pastor Manders, and tomorrow you are to speak publicly in memory of my husband. I shall not speak tomorrow, but now I will speak frankly to you as you have spoken to me.
To plead excuses for your conduct?
No, I will only tell you a story. All that you have just said about my husband and me and our life after, you know none of that from personal observation. From that moment, you never set foot in our house again.
But you and your husband left the town immediately after.
And in my husband's lifetime, you never came to see us. It was business that forced you to contact me on the affairs of the orphanage.
Helen, if that is meant as a reproach, I would beg you to bear in mind...
The regard you owe to your position, yes, and that I was a runaway wife. My point is that your judgment as to my married life is founded upon nothing but common knowledge.
Well, I admit that.
Well then, Pastor Manders, I will tell you the truth. I have sworn to myself that one day you should know it. You alone.
What is the truth, then?
The truth is that my husband died after 19 years of marriage, just as wicked as he lived all his days. As wicked in his desires as he was before you married us.
Your whole married life, all these years, was nothing more than a hidden abyss?
Now you know it.
This is inconceivable to me. I cannot grasp it, but How was it possible? How could such a state of things be kept secret?
That has been my struggle day after day. After Oswald's birth, I thought Alving seemed to be a little better, but it did not last long. And then I had to struggle twice as hard so nobody should know what sort of man my child's father was. And you know what power Alving had over winning people's hearts? Nobody seemed to be able to believe anything but good of him. But at last, Pastor Manders, the most repulsive thing of all happened.
More repulsive than what you have told me.
I had gone on bearing with him, although I knew very well the secrets of his life outdoors. But he brought the scandal within our own walls.
Impossible.
Yes, here in our own home. It was over there in the dining room when I first came to know of it. I was busy in there with something and the door was standing ajar. I heard our housemaid come up from the garden. Soon after, I heard Alving come in too. I heard him say something softly to her, and then I heard... oh, it still sounds in my ears, so hateful and yet so ludicrous. I heard my own servant maid whisper, "Let me go, Mr. Alving. Let me be."
But it cannot have been more than levity, Mrs. Alving.
Mr. Alving had his way with the girl, and that connection had consequences, Mr. Manders.
Such things in your house.
I had borne a great deal in this house. To keep him at home in the evenings, I had to make myself his boon companion into his secret orgies up in his room. There I have had to sit alone with him, to drink with him, and to listen to his silly talk. I have had to fight with him to get him dragged to bed.
And you were able to bear all this?
I had to bear it for my little boy's sake. But when the last insult was added, when my own servant maid was with child, then I swore to myself, this shall come to an end. And so I took the reins into my own hand, over him and everything else. For now I had a weapon against him, you see, and he dared not oppose me. It was then that I sent Oswald away from home. He was nearly 7 years old and was beginning to observe and ask questions. That I could not bear. It seemed to me the child must be poisoned by merely breathing the air of this polluted home. That was why I sent him away. And now you can see, too, why he was never allowed to set foot inside his home as long as his father lived. No one knows what that cost me.
You have indeed had a life of trial.
I could never have borne it if I had not had my work. I may truly say that I have worked. All the improvements that Alving was so much praised for having introduced. Do you suppose he had any due for anything of the sort? He who lay on the sofa all day reading.
And it is to this man that you raise a memorial.
It always seemed to me that the truth must come out. So the orphanage was to deaden all rumours and set every doubt at rest. And besides, I had one other reason. I was determined that Oswald should inherit nothing whatever from his father. The sums I have spent upon the orphanage, year after year, make up the amount that made Lieutenant Alving a good match in his day. I have reckoned it up precisely.
I don't understand.
I do not want my husband's money to pass into Oswald's hands. My son shall have everything from me. Everything.
In what countenance am I to deliver my discourse tomorrow?
Oh, you will get through it somehow.
Yes, it would not do to provoke scandal.
No. But then this will be ended. From the day after tomorrow, I shall act in every way as though he who is dead had never lived in this house. There shall be no one here but my boy and his mother. Wait, who's that outside? Excuse me, Pastor. No!
What can be the matter? What is it, Mrs. Alving?
Ghosts risen again!
What do you mean?
Oswald and Regina are kissing in the garden, just like his father did before him.
Regina, is it possible? Is she Alving's daughter?
Yes!
Calm down, Mrs. Alving, calm down. I suppose they cannot overhear us?
Not when the door is shut.
I am really quite at a loss. I'm so utterly without experience in matters of this sort.
Out of the house she must go, and that immediately.
Yes, of course she must.
Oh, but to where?
Where to? Home to her father, of course.
To whom did you say?
To her... Of course, Engstrand is not her father. Good God, Mrs. Alving, it's impossible. You must be mistaken about this.
There is no possibility of mistake. The maid confessed everything to me, so there was nothing to be done but get the matter hushed up. The girl left our service at once and got a good sum of money to hold her tongue. The rest she managed for herself. She renewed her acquaintance with Engstrand, no doubt let him see that she had money in her purse, and told him some tale about a foreigner. Why, you married them yourself.
Well, I recollect that Engstrand coming to give notice of the marriage, and he was quite overwhelmed with contrition and bitterly reproached himself for the misbehaviour that he and his sweetheart had been guilty of.
Of course he had to take the blame upon himself.
But such duplicity on his part, and towards me too. I could never have believed it of Jacob Engstrand. I shall not fail to take him to task. He may be sure of that. How much did the girl receive?
300.
For a miserable 300 to go and marry a fallen woman.
Then what have you to say of me? I went and married a fallen man.
Good heavens! What are you talking about? A fallen man?
Do you think Alving was any purer when I went with him to the altar than Joanna was when Engstrand married her?
There's a world of difference between the two cases.
Well, not so much difference after all, except in the price. A miserable 300 versus Alving's whole fortune.
How can you compare such absolutely dissimilar cases? You have taken counsel with your own heart.
I thought you understood where my heart had strayed to at the time.
Had I understood anything of the kind, I should not have been a daily guest in your husband's house.
The fact remains that with myself I took no counsel whatever.
Well, this at least remains clear. Your marriage was in full accordance with law and order.
Oh, that perpetual law and order! That is what does all the mischief in this world of ours.
Mrs. Alving, that's a sinful way of talking.
Well, I can't help it. I must have done with all this constraint and insincerity. I must work my way out to freedom.
What do you mean by that?
I ought to have never concealed the facts of Alving's life. But I dared not do anything else. I'm such a coward.
A coward?
I should go to Oswald and tell him all I have told you, every word of it.
You say you are a coward to do your plain duty. Have you forgotten that a child ought to love and honour his father and mother?
Ought Oswald to love and honour my husband?
Is there no voice in your mother's heart that forbids you to destroy your son's ideals?
But what about the truth?
What about the ideals?
Oh, ideals!
Do not despise ideals, Mrs. Alving. Take Oswald's case. He unfortunately seems to have few enough ideals as it is, but his father stands before him as an ideal.
Yes, that is true. For the duty and the proprieties, I lied to my boy year after year.
You have established a happy illusion in your son's heart, Mrs. Alving, and you ought not to undervalue it.
Oh, who knows whether it is so happy after all? But at any rate, I will not have any tampering with Regina. He shall not go and wreck the poor girl's life.
No, good God, that would be terrible. But what then?
If I weren't such a pitiful coward, I shall say to him, marry her or make what arrangements you please, only let us have nothing underhand about it.
But merciful heavens, would you let them marry? Children of the same father, anything so dreadful and unheard of.
Do you really mean unheard of?
Questions of that kind I must decline to discuss with you, Mrs. Alving. But that you dare to call your scruples cowardly.
Let me tell you what I mean. I am timid and faint-hearted because of the ghosts that hang about me, and that I can never quite shake off.
What do you say hangs about you?
Ghosts! When I saw Regina and Oswald out there, it was as if the ghosts had rose up before me. But I almost think all of us are ghosts. Pastor Manders, it is not only what we have inherited from our mother and father that walks in us. It's all sorts of dead ideas and lifeless old beliefs. They have no vitality, but they cling to us all the same, as thick as the sands of the sea, and we cannot shake them off. And then we are, one and all, so pitiful, afraid of the light.
You have been reading horrible, radical books.
You are mistaken, my dear pastor. It was you yourself who set me thinking, and I thank you for it with all my heart. Yes, when you forced me to under the yoke of duty and obligation, when you lauded as right and proper what my whole soul rebelled against, it was then that I began to look into the seams of your doctrines. I wanted only to pick at a single knot, but when I had got it undone, the whole thing ravelled out.
And was that the upshot of my life's hardest battle?
Call it rather your most pitiful defeat.
It was my greatest victory, Helen. The victory over myself.
It was a crime against us both.
When you went astray and came to me crying, "Here I am, take me," I commanded you, saying, "Woman, go home to your lawful husband." Was that a crime?
Yes, I think so.
We two do not understand each other.
Not now, at any rate.